Good morning. It is an all Evansville day with Phil and myself this morning. Phil, how are you?
I'm doing great, Keith. How are you doing today?
I am spectacular. There's constant need to give everybody disclaimers so they don't get into things beyond their comprehension. And I put out there today to play at your own risk. I don't know what kind of things you guys might be playing out there, but it's life is full of risk and opportunities, and we intend to bring this to you guys every week with just an opportunity for you to consider possibilities that are going on in the marketplace, possibilities with your finances, and just to bring some wisdom to add to your lifestyle. So hopefully we are accomplishing that on a regular basis. If we're doing it, click like and subscribe and send it out to your friends as well. So that's it for the disclaimer today. Bill, what's on your mind?
Yeah, you mentioned wisdom, and I've been seeking wisdom, Keith, pretty intently for the last couple of weeks. It's really been a joy. I've been going back in the archives of Gimbal newsletters that you've written through the years. What was amazing to me, as a former Gimbal client, actually, before I got in the business, is that you've been doing this, at least from what I could tell, since 1999, which would be 25 years of newsletters.
That is a lot of writing. It's never a dull moment because each month I have to come up with new copy, and that's it's just an interesting part of my month.
Yeah, well, I think it's a real opportunity for certainly I've recognized it as an opportunity for me to continue to learn and grow in my wisdom as a recipient of the newsletter through the years. And frankly, just with this research I've been doing, it's been really cool because you can dig out nuggets of information that you've written many, many years ago that are so relevant for what life is like today.
I'm a bit afraid to go back and look at them because of the lack of wisdom I might have had in those early years and what I thought was wisdom and what actually is. I think that happens with everybody that when you're 25, you know everything, and by the time you're 30, you realize how big the world is and how little you know. So I've found some newsletters that are even predating
Yeah.
those, and some of the stuff I was writing in my 20s was pretty comical.
Yeah, life is humbling that way, right? I mean, when you're young and ambitious, you think you've got the world by the tail. And then as you grow older and you get a few gray hairs, you come to realize that um, there's a lot you didn't know and a lot you need to learn. So,
I could only hope for gray hairs, Phil.
yeah, well, as the oldest member of the Gimbal team, my hair is graying sufficiently, Keith. So I've got that covered for you, brother.
That offers a lot of wisdom right there. Gray hair and wisdom.
Yeah, but this is one of my favorite weekends of the year, Keith. Did you
Okay.
know
I
that?
did not.
Did you know that from the time I was a little boy, I have loved football? It
Well, I
has,
knew you were a Central Bear. I forgot what position you played for the Bears. Were you a running back?
I did, but before that I played defensive back. I did all kinds of stuff. You
Yeah.
know, I remember actually my sophomore year, I was a member of the scout team, and I was on Bob's Bandits.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the name of our scout team. And one of my pleasures was I got to emulate the running back that the defense was going to face
Okay.
that week.
Okay.
And Keith, let's just say that I had a few scraped elbows, a few sore bones surviving Bob's Bandits, but man, it was really fun.
One of my close friends was on your team, and he was all state, I think, his junior and senior year. And I would literally come home from college to watch him play because he loved hitting people. So he probably would have just thrived on
Am
hitting.
I allowed to say his name?
Well, you might, yeah, go ahead.
Or should I just give his initials?
Well, there were the Ballbach brothers,
The Ballbach brothers, and Bill was a beast on defensive end, man. He was unbelievable. He was tall. I don't know how is Bill like 6'3"?
I don't know, but he was one of the meanest people I ever knew when I was in high school. He was tough.
He was a stud. He
Yeah.
was tough. So shout out to you, Bill, if you're watching. You were a phenomenal teammate and a great football player. And brother Jim, he was a phenomenal linebacker on that team. But anyway, I digress. My point is that as many of you know, most of you know, this is Super Bowl weekend, and the Super Bowl annually draws about 115 million viewers. So you're going to have people all over the world, all over the globe, that have their eyeballs cued in to watch this grudge match between the Chiefs and the Niners. And I would venture to say, this year's broadcast could exceed expectations because we have a new element of fan base in the Swifties.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I know my wife is interested in seeing if and when Taylor Swift makes an appearance. So yeah, it's really exciting. But with good and with sport and with opportunity, also there can be a dark side sometimes.
Okay.
And one of the newsletters that I came upon when I was doing my deep dive was a newsletter that you wrote back in 2022. And it was tied to the NCAA basketball tournament, but the topic was sports betting and how sports betting was becoming a major component of athletic events that we watch, and really a temptation for people to bet on those events. So you know, there's a lot of temptation for us to do things like that because it can be fun, but it can also have some risks.
Well, I have really strong opinions about not just sports betting, but gambling in general. And I've mentioned this in past shows that the stock market, people call it legalized gambling, but there's a thing called a zero sum game. It's like a zero sum game means that we have $1, and if we start gambling about that, either you win my dollar or I lose it. So the zero sum says that only one person can win. In the stock market, it's not a zero sum game, that you could buy a local stock at $100. I could buy it at $200, and then it could be at $300, and we all made money. And somebody doesn't have to lose in order for you to gain in the stock market. And so in gambling, somebody has to lose for somebody to win. And so that's the essence of gambling. But
Yeah.
I've just had a lot this happy-go-lucky face knows a lot more about gambling than I probably talk about.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of it goes back to 2018 with a ruling the Supreme Court handed down that essentially opened the door for legalized gambling. And it's got to be approved, I guess, at the state level. But as you can well guess, it hasn't taken long for that to happen. Now you can actually do legalized online betting in 38 states. So it's a huge temptation. And one of the things that that has occurred is, you know, you've got these gambling apps that will put these incentives out to try to get people to try their product.
Yeah, it's the same marketing that I'm told that drug dealers use, and it's I'm going to give it to you for free, and it's a that marketing style should tell you all that you need to know, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I would say the other thing, there was a study that was done by Men's Health magazine, and it was done recently. It was actually done in 2023. And they talked about the demographics that are starting to dominate, you know, the legalized sports betting. And it actually is a real problem for a lot of millennials. You know, kids that are in the, not kids, but young adults who are in their 20s who get attracted to betting, and it's really become epidemic in some respects with people that get addicted to it. So
yeah, I got introduced to it at a pretty young age. I was probably 20, and my dorm room phone was ringing, and a bookie was calling me trying to track down my roommate at like 12 o'clock and midnight. And I was pretty aggressive as a young man. probably told the bookie what I thought about him at the time, which probably may or may not have been the wisest thing. But the evolution of gambling it's a cyclical thing. It's I want to get rich quick. I want to get something for nothing. And yet, if you just go to Las Vegas, you can tell that probability, just looking at the buildings and all the lights and the signs, probability of you making money gambling is pretty close to zero.
Yeah. The house wins, and the house wins regularly by design.
I mentioned this book a couple weeks ago, The Gambler by Billy Walters. He is one of the only people that's successfully won. It's a good read if you're interested in this stuff, but in his book, he said less than 2% of the people win. And that doesn't mean that 2% of the money gambled is a winner. It just 2% of the people, like a small gambler may win, but like for him, he can't even gamble in his own name because the house won't let him gamble. So he has to send in people with his money to the house to gamble because
that tells you a lot too,
yeah, they have
right?
face recognition software that if you're good, they won't let you in the casinos and such. And so yeah, growing up in Evansville, we call it Heavensville, but there's some seedy components of Evansville, like nothing against your alma mater, but their nickname is the Aces, and it's a gambling.
Yeah.
It's about the riverboat gamblers, right? It's not about you're number one. It's about the riverboat gamblers where they got their name. The riverboats would come up and down the Ohio River. There's a great book about a guy named Titanic Thompson, and Titanic Thompson would go up and down the river gambling, and he would just take people's money because he would never bet unless he knew he could get your money.
Yeah.
And I recommend it if you want a fun book. Titanic Thompson is it gives you the understanding of the other side of a bet, like what the person that you're betting with that's a professional is doing to get your money. And the deck is not stacked evenly, like they're coming after you.
No, the other thing they do too is, and part of the reason why these incentives they offer are so powerful is because what they're really trying to do is hook you in for the long run. They don't care if you win in the short run. They actually kind of want you to win in the short run, because if you do, then you're going to be tempted to increase your bets, continue to put more money down on the games, and it ends up in a really vicious cycle where it becomes extremely detrimental the longer that you do it. So a lot of dangers with it.
Yeah, you can look up a former Indianapolis Colts quarterback, Art Schleister. He got involved in it in the 1980s, and he spiraled to a bad place. I was in a meeting probably shortly after that, maybe the early 90s, with former Mayor Steve Goldsmith. There was probably only about 10 of us in the room, and Goldsmith was there with one of the Pulliams that owned the Indianapolis Star at the time, and they were just talking about the idea that when the state, whether it's Indiana or the federal government, gets involved in gambling where it's beneficial to them, there's really no monitor of the morality of what goes on. And so when the state is making taxes money on the gambling, there's no incentive to do the right thing for people. And it's a squirrely idea.
Yeah.
There was a bar in Evansville called the Highland Inn, and as early as the 1970s, I'm not sure how I was in the bar in the 1970s, but
it's a different time back then, Keith.
Yeah, and they would a line is a term in the gambling industry that's the number of points that you either give up or take depending on which team you're going to bet on. And in the 1970s, the bookie that worked in that bar, he had the line on your football games, like when you were playing at Central.
No kidding.
Yeah, and so not only the component of people gambling, but I wonder how much it would take to get a player on a high school football team to fumble a football. Would it take $500 to get him to fumble a football? $1,000? Probably wouldn't take much if somebody needed some money to affect the outcome of something as simple and pure as a high school game. But now that major league sports, whether it's football, baseball, or basketball, have endorsed gambling, my guess is it's going to make those sports less pure, less authentic, because I'm not prophetic, but I would bet if I was going to gamble that you'll see an article in the next 5 years about an athlete that that swayed a game.
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me. Greed is a very powerful emotion, and unfortunately, when you have an environment where you've got something like legalized gambling, it's a temptation that is hard for people to resist. So that would not shock me at all. And really, my recommendation would be that like when I first started watching football when I was really little, and I would watch games with my dad, we just loved the game. And so watch the game for the love of the game, for the competition, for the tremendous athletes that play the sport, and cheer on your team. And the other thing is, eat a lot of chicken wings. I can't recommend enough eating tons of chicken wings. As a matter of fact, Keith, did you know there will be between 1.3 and 1.4 billion chicken wings consumed during the Super Bowl?
I don't even know what to think about those chickens.
You won't want to bet. You know what I mean?
I just don't even know what to think about those chickens. Like almost 1 billion chickens are gonna have to offer the ultimate sacrifice so you can watch the Super Bowl.
It's a pity, but it is satisfying as a consumer to have those wings.
I will tell you, kind of wrapping up about gambling, that there's a show on Netflix called Operation Flagrant Foul. So this happened over the last decade, where an NBA referee was throwing games, and so not only can the players be involved, the coaches or the referees were getting paid to be involved with throwing the games. So with that idea, I think it's going to just be really, really interesting. Having grown up in Evansville, my grandfather was a compulsive gambler. I had a close friend that was a compulsive gambler. I would go as a young man, go to the horse races.
Yeah, Ellis Park, right?
Ellis Park,
Yeah.
Ottoman Park, and I'm allergic to horses, and I would go. And so people can get sucked into addictive behaviors in ways they don't understand. And the like that, if you get to read the Titanic Thompson book, or you study some of the history of Evansville, it just really paints the picture of gambling down there. There was a guy named Ray Ryan. I don't know if you know that name.
No, I don't.
Yeah, I grew up on Lombard. Any of you that are ever cruising Evansville, it's a 1 mile long road, and the further south you get, those are the have-nots versus the farther north on this road that are the haves. The southern, at least on the section I lived on, the southern end of it is projects, apartments for underprivileged people. Then you get to the next section of duplexes. Last time I drove down Lombard in the last 2 or 3 years, some of those duplexes were burnt out. Then you get to like 1,000 to 1,500 square foot ranch houses. You cross Washington Avenue, there's probably 2,500 square foot 2-story houses, and you keep going all the way to the end of Lombard. And at the end of the Lombard, the president's house of the University of Evansville is on there, and then catty corner to him. And I think these were close to $1 million houses at one point. So you go the whole spectrum in this 1 mile. There was a fellow that I didn't know of that his name was Ray Ryan, and I was sitting in social studies class. I think it was 1977. You guys can Google it to get the actual date. And my desk jumped, and I was like, "What was that?" And Ray Ryan, from best I recall, he was an Evansville citizen, and he was involved in the development of Palm Springs, California.
Wow.
He was also involved in the gambling of the underworld of the mafia, which came back to Evansville. And whatever he had done on that day in 1977, 78, the mafia had enough of his antics and blew him up. And the shaking of my desk was the explosion of his car blowing up just maybe a half mile from our high school. And so there's all kinds of shady things that happen with gambling. I would encourage you to not listen to the people that endorse these things. I don't know that their endorsements. I don't know. I wouldn't say that their ignorance gives them a pass on their endorsement, but there's an old proverb that says a good name is to be chosen rather than great riches. And so if you watch these apps and you see some of the faces of people endorsing them, they're not looking out for your best interests. It's the money
No.
that's going in their pocket. And unfortunately, they're willing to sell their good name to the detriment of those millennials you
Yeah.
mentioned.
That's really true.
Well, let's take a look at the markets real
Sounds
quick
good.
here. We've had a little bit of a rally going on the last week. I'm going to share my screen with you all and see if some of this is helpful for you. This screen here is the daily market average of the New York Stock Exchange, which is pretty non-exciting information to a lot of people. But what I want to look at is this this line right here, and this is the New York Stock Exchange advanced decline line. And so the red is just showing you the declining stocks, and the blue is showing you the advancing stocks. And when you have advancing stocks leading the way, that's a bull market where everybody wants to own those stocks. And so right now they're kind of they're right on top of each other. There's not much going on. The NASDAQ kind of gives you a similar kind of thing, and both of those lines are trending down, so that there's not a lot of people jumping into this market, even though some stocks are hitting new highs. And I'm going to switch over here to the this is the New York Stock Exchange. This is the broader market. And so this is the 10-day moving average of new highs versus new lows. And you can see in the fall here that the new lows were hitting new highs, the number of new lows that are on in the market. And we had that going on last summer. And then if we went back, let's just change this date to a year ago and see what it looks like. You can see back in the 2023 and before, on a constant basis, stocks were hitting a new lows. And that happens when you're in a bear market. And so if we go back to today, we can see that there are still a good number of new lows going out there, 31 yesterday and 130 new highs. So that's looking good on the New York Stock Exchange. And then if we go to the next version of this, it tells you the NASDAQ. And the NASDAQ is the broader market of stocks that are out there. And that's been our hope, is that we would see the broader market start to rally. And we had a little bit of it going on during the end of the year and the first of the year. But right now, the new highs and new lows in the NASDAQ are pretty much right on top of each other. Yesterday was 147 new highs and 108 new lows. But we'd really love to see this kind of repeat this behavior that happened over here. And what all this tells us is that the market right now, even though you're seeing maybe some of your accounts hit new highs or new highs for the year, or you're seeing the media talk about the markets are hitting new highs or hitting levels that they haven't been to in a couple of years, it's not happening across the board. It's a very small number of stocks that are driving that.
Yeah, well, that was really the story last year too, right? The Magnificent Seven really kind of led the parade for the S&P 500.
And so we saw this week, we saw some of that some of those, whether it's Amazon, Netflix, whoever the things are, that they keep stretching the expectations of people. And if they come out with earnings and they don't hit those expectations, those stocks will drop dramatically. And one of the things that I'm kind of curious about and interested in is a whole different sector of different stocks, rather than those Magnificent Seven or the FANG stocks, what they used to be called, and this is not a recommendation to buy or anything, is these are the mid-sized companies, and the mid-sized companies nobody's really shown much interest in. And we've got really a top that it's hit here in the last few months, right on this particular ETF, in the 513 level, and it really hadn't been that high in a long time. This is a 12-month picture here, but if I go back to the weekly picture, you can see all the way back to 21, that 2021, the broader market just has gone
Yeah.
nowhere. It's gone sideways. And that, if you're a stock picker, that's what's been going on with stocks. They just haven't been going anywhere. If you bought Apple, Netflix, Google, those things, you probably feel like a rocket scientist. You might have just been lucky though.
Yeah, right. I mean, these are really the stocks that are the bread and butter of the economy. So if we could see them break out, that would be a real positive for the
I
market.
think it would be amazing.
Yeah.
And historically, this is a monthly picture of those mid-sized companies, and you can see over time that they've had a pretty constant slope upwards. There's no guarantee that they'll ever do it again, but they just haven't gone anywhere since probably they peaked out here at the end of 2020 or early 2021. And so that's a huge opportunity. I'd love to see that start getting some rhythm to it, and it's trying right now. It's had
Yeah.
a good week. The week is kind of pushing towards those highs. So we'll see what happens between now and next week in the mid cap stocks. And,
That's exciting stuff.
what else you got on your mind today, Phil?
You know, I just would encourage people to have a great time of fellowship with your family, your friends this weekend. Have some chicken wings, some chili, enjoy the Super Bowl, and don't bet. You know, just the best bet is to just watch the game and have fun.
Well, so Phil, you're saying just say no.
Just say no.
And what I'll finish off telling you, I think I'm going to cheer for the 49ers. I'm undecided on it. But Brock Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant. He's the last guy picked in the draft. And what I'll tell you guys is you guys are all relevant. We think you're a big deal. We hope to see you soon and you enjoy your best life. All right, we'll talk to you soon.